Hello, I'm Andrew Kamei-Deitch, and we're continuing our look at pre-modern Japan. Today we're going to be talking about the Heian period, Japan's classical age, which runs from 794 to 1185. Let's get started. Now, I want to make a couple of key points here. The Heian period, known for its sophisticated political and cultural world, represents the highest form of development of a pre-modern monarchy and court before the dawn of the medieval age. And of course, in due course, we'll be getting to the medieval age as well. Second point here, I want to show that, however, this world only emerged gradually through a variety of interconnected factors. Now, the first thing I want to do is to talk about the transition to the Heian period. And to do that, I need to talk about a family known as the Fujiwara. The Fujiwara family was a courtier family, or a kuge, that came to dominate the court. How were they able to do this? Well, the two things we need to keep in mind, first of all, their control over court posts. So they gained the ability to decide who would gain what position. The second thing that was important to their rise to power was their ability to control marriage relations with the royal family. Essentially, what they started doing was making sure that a Fujiwara daughter would constantly marry the monarch. And this way, as the generations went by, every child would have a connection through his mother to the Fujiwara family. And therefore, this enabled them to gain control over the throne without actually replacing it. This also established a pattern that other courtier families went on to imitate later. Why was the capital moved, first of all? Because, after all, we talked about what a glorious era Nara had been. Well, Kammu decided to move the capital for a few reasons. The first thing he wanted to do was to reassert royal power in opposition to the powerful Buddhist temples and courtier families that had come to dominate the previous capital. The second thing he wanted to do was to make a fresh start for this branch of the royal line. By establishing a new capital and then moving his seat of power there, he can more strongly identify his era with that location, rather than trying to sort of borrow the legitimacy of the other branch that had been associated with Nara. And the third thing, finally, he wanted to find a more convenient location for transportation routes in order to supply the city and bring in not just supplies, but also, of course, money, so tax revenue. Now, several previous moves had already been made, but they had always returned to Nara. Kammu himself had previously chosen Nagaoka for a fresh start, but this turned out to be a disaster. In addition to problems with flooding and disease, the administrator he chose to oversee the project ended up being assassinated. So this did not turn out very well. Well, in 794, he decided that they would move to Heian instead. And although this was not intended to last forever, it ended up being the capital of Japan for over a millennium. So here we have indicated several of the other capitals that were moved back and forth to at the end of the Nara period, before they finally settled on Heian, which of course you can see up at the north there. So let's just take a quick look at a few of the things we can say about the new capital, Heian-kyo. Well, first of all, just like Heijo-kyo, it was modeled on Chang'an, namely the capital of the Tang dynasty. The palace was situated in the north of the city, and it faced south. The city was also divided into eastern and western sections with markets and temples, and the city was comprised of blocks that were separated by major and minor streets. They also had effective ports and transportation systems established to move goods around. Generally speaking, the aristocratic and wealthy residents tended to live in the east, whereas poorer people lived in the west. And here we have a sort of modern reconstruction of what the city would have looked like. Here, of course, our vantage point is starting at the north and looking down south. So we have the palace here front and center. Now, there's been quite a few attempts by people to map Heian-kyo onto modern Kyoto. So this is one such image that shows, if we look at modern Kyoto today, where the palace and the other areas of the old capital would have been situated. There's also a fair number of walking tours that take place in Kyoto, where people travel around and try to look at evidence that's been left over from the old capital. Second thing I want to do is to talk a bit about the Heian court and administration. Now, of course, to do that, we have to talk about the court itself. Nominally, the court was centered around the Tenno, but soon real power shifted into the hands of the powerful families again, especially the northern branch of the Fujiwara family. So the Fujiwara family were by this time already a very big and influential family. It's the northern branch who gained the most power in politics, and that's the branch we're going to be talking about consistently. The court was the political and cultural center of the capital, and they also managed the government, but also set standards for society as well. And the main governing body when we're talking about the court is the Council of State. Local administration was a matter of particular importance because this, of course, concerned the flow of goods back and forth between areas and local areas and the capital, and also, of course, tax revenue. Now, the realm was divided up into provinces, each of which had a provincial governor, and this governor was responsible for tax collection and local law enforcement and security for their area. Now, generally speaking, these provincial governors were not necessarily happy in their position because the entire way of thinking of the Heian court was that the court itself and more broadly the capital Heian was the center of their social and cultural life. And so if you were a provincial governor and got sent into a local area to manage things there, this was seen as not exactly a desirable thing because, of course, it took you away from the capital, which was supposed to be the center of your world. At the same time, though, it did give you the opportunity for self-aggrandizement. So there were an awful lot of opportunities to gain wealth as a provincial governor. So I pointed out here, people were able to profit personally, especially if they were in a fairly wealthy area. Estates, of course, were very important. Estates are shoen. These were the key to power, wealth, and influence for families at the time. Courtier families and also temples competed with each other to amass and develop their estates effectively. And when we're talking about estates, of course, well, there was a variety of ways in which an estate could be valuable to a courtier family or a temple. First of all, resources, so things like mines, lumber, fish, this sort of thing. Also, they could be important as trade routes or transport. If you could control a particular trade route, then you could tax people passing down it, this sort of thing. It gave you a lot of advantages. Finally, an estate could also be important because of cultural capital, authority, or spiritual power. If you controlled a famous sacred spot or a temple or a shrine area, then this, of course, would bring you prestige. And there were specific strategies that a courtier family might use to try and develop their estates. One was to control a resource, and the other was to control a trade route. They also practiced a series of tax avoidance strategies, so people would try to find ways to avoid paying taxes on their income from estates, thereby benefiting the family at the cost of the state itself. And we're going to be picking up here next time, talking more about the Heian period. Thank you very much.